Hi, I'm Rod Pry, the director of the Pennsylvania State Sunday School Association, and this is our weekly International Sunday School Lesson Preview. This is the preview of the lesson for Sunday, July the 18th. This week we are continuing with the unit of lessons from the book of Romans. This week's lesson comes from chapter 4, verses 1 to 12, and the title of the lesson is Faith of Abraham. Back in the 1930s, the U.S. Southwest experienced unbelievable drought. Things got so bad that it was known as the Dust Bowl. There were dust storms, crops failed, and many people were forced from their homes. The story is told of a small rural Oklahoma church that decided to hold a special service to pray for rain. As the community began to gather for the service, everyone saw one of the older ladies of the congregation coming up the path to the church carrying an umbrella. Everyone sort of snickered and someone mockingly asked, "Why do you have an umbrella, Mary?" Immediately, the older lady replied, "Well, we're here to pray for rain, and I believe that the Lord will hear our prayers and send us rain, and I don't want to get wet as I walk home." I don't know if she actually needed to use her umbrella as she walked home or not. I'd like to believe that she did, but that's not the point of the story. The point is the great faith that this woman had. Faith enough to believe that God would send the rain that she was praying for, and she would need to use her umbrella so she didn't get wet. That is great faith. That's putting your faith into actions. Not just saying that they were going to pray for rain, but actually believing that the rain was on the way. Like this woman, there are many people who had great faith throughout the Bible. And in this week's lesson, we'll be looking at one of those people and the influence and example that Paul saw in his life. I'm talking about Abraham. Abraham lived somewhere around 2000 BC, and Paul used Abraham as an example of faith as he wrote to the church in Rome. Abraham certainly was a man of faith, but he wasn't perfect. He had his moments when his faith came up short. Yes, he followed the Lord by faith and moved several times at God's leading. But on one occasion, he lied about Sarah being his wife and told everyone that she was his sister, just to protect himself. Abraham is probably best remembered for the fact that he and his wife Sarah were very old when their son Isaac was born. That took a lot of faith to continue believing that God would give them a son and that son would be the one through which the Lord would make his offsprings as numerous as the stars in the night sky. Abraham wasn't perfect, but he was a man of faith. And because of his faith, Abraham has been held up as an example by Paul and other writers in the Bible. And in today's lesson from Paul's letter to the church at Rome, Paul uses Abraham to show those people the difference between faith and good works. In verses 2 and 3, Paul says, if, in fact, Abraham was justified by works, he had something to boast about, but not before God. What does the scripture say? Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. What's Paul really saying? He's saying that Abraham did good things, but those good things did not put him in right standing with God. What did? His faith and the fact that he believed in God. He then goes on to say in verses 4 and 5, now to the one who works, wages are not credited as a gift, but an obligation. However, to the one who does not work but trusts God, who justifies the ungodly, their faith is credited as righteousness. In other words, good works are their own reward, but the faith of the one who trusts in God is what sets them right with the Lord. Then in verse 9, he asks this question, is this blessedness only for the circumcised or also for the uncircumcised? As you read this question, you need to remember that this was one of the big debates that was raging there within the early church. Many people thought that new Gentile converts to Christianity should be required to be circumcised and then follow all of the old Jewish laws. But even though many people continued to believe this, the apostles back in Jerusalem had already ruled that this should not be required. Continuing in verse 9, Paul writes, "We have been saying that Abraham's faith was credited to him as righteousness." Under what circumstances was it credited? Was it after he was circumcised or before? And then he answers his own question. It was not after, but before. And he wraps it all up in verses 11 and 12. He received circumcision as a sign, a seal of the righteousness that he had by faith while he was still uncircumcised. So then, he is the father of all who believe, but have not been circumcised, in order that righteousness might be credited to them. And he is then also the father of the circumcised, who not only are circumcised, but who also follow in the footsteps of the faith of our father Abraham, as he had before he was circumcised. What do you see as the most important element of Christianity? Is it the rules and regulations, or is it the faith? Doing good things and following rules and regulations are important. They're the things that every Christian should be doing. But quite honestly, those things alone will not save you. What will? Faith in Jesus Christ and believing in Him. I'm Rod Pry for the Pennsylvania State Sunday School Association. Thank you for being with me today. I hope to see you again next week.